What's up, guys? Today we're going to be going through the top 10 records of 1967. I just did several hours of research trying to find what the best records were that came out that year. And what we're going to be grading these records on is going to be how many good songs they have, what was the production like, what was the songwriting like, what was the performance like, and how unique or how innovative was the music at that time. So before we get to number 10, I do want to talk about number 11 because number 11 almost made the 10th spot. That's going to be the album Wild Honey that came out by the Beach Boys, but although it has some good music on there, it didn't quite make number 10. So with that being said, let's get to number 10. So number 10 on my list is going to be an album by the Rolling Stones called Their Satanic Majesty's Request. This album was a huge turn for the Rolling Stones at the time, coming off of Between the Buttons was their album before this. And so this album was a psychedelic album. I think in response to Sgt. Pepper coming out, they wanted to do their own spin on that. And so in my opinion, I think this record is even better than Sgt. Pepper. Two of the best songs on this record are going to be 2000 Man as well as She's a Rainbow. And then there's some other ones on there that there's a lot of psychedelic stuff. There's like, you know, the reprises and all that. But I say what stands out the most is She's a Rainbow and 2000 Man, as well as a song called In Another Land. That's another good one. But I think this one is important because this was a huge change for the Rolling Stones at the time. And the production's not perfect, but it's just mediocre at the time. The songwriting is good. I would say their songwriting stands out. The performance is good enough, I guess you could say. And then the album cover is awesome too. Number 9 on my list is going to be a record by Aretha Franklin called I Never Loved a Man the Way I Love You. I think this record is very important not only for her career but also for the genre at the time, because this album had 3 of her biggest songs come out, and that's going to be I Never Loved a Man the Way I Love You, it's going to be Respect, and it's going to be Do Right Woman, Do Right Man. Now another song I think is good on this record is one called Save Me, which is one of the only ones she wrote. But I don't think it's her songwriting that makes her stand out. I think it's her voice and the performance of the songs is what makes Aretha Franklin special. So that's really what stands out on this record. The production is good, nothing to complain about there. And then I would say the rest of the songs are kind of just, I don't want to say bad, but they're just mediocre and they all kind of sound similar. But definitely not bad by any degree. Number 8 on my list is going to be an album by Jimi Hendrix called Axis Bold as Love. I think the song that stands out the most on this record is going to be Little Wing. It not only highlights Jimi Hendrix's great guitar playing, but also how well he can write a song. Then we have other ones like Axis Bold as Love. We have Castles Made of Sand. And we really get good guitar playing. We get good songwriting. We get decent production, not phenomenal, but good enough. Probably average for that year. And then we also get a great performance by Jimi Hendrix. So I would say at this time, even though this is his second record, these songs are still new. This is, you know, the sound of Jimi Hendrix is still new at the time. So I would say this is still an innovative record for 1967. All right, then we go on to number 7. Number 7 is going to be the debut album by The Doors. This album is very special because this is the first time you get to hear The Doors. This is the first time you see Jim Morrison's lyrics, the first time you hear him singing, and the first time you get to actually hear the sound of what the Doors are going to be. So I think the songs that stand out the most on this record are going to be Break On Through to the Other Side, as well as Light My Fire. And then there's other ones like Soul Kitchen, there's The End, there's some blues jams on there. But I say that the songwriting stands out because you have something like Light My Fire, which is Robbie Krieger's first song he ever wrote, which is quite impressive. And then you also have the performance of the band because the jams they do, the solos they take, the performance of the band is also phenomenal too. So I would say it's innovative, the performance is good, the songwriting is good, and I would say the production of the record is actually better than most of the other ones on this list. All right, then we get to number 6, and that is going to be a record by Harry Nilsson called Pandemonium Shadow Show. Now, Harry Nilsson was very inspired by the Beatles, and you could hear it on this record not only because he covers one of their songs, but he actually covered a second one of their songs, but he made it into a medley where he combined a bunch of Beatles songs into one. And that really highlights how creative and how well of a songwriter he was. There's other ones like Cuddly Toy in 1941 that are also cool, but I say the best song on the record is probably going to be River Deep Mountain High, which is a cover, but he probably made the best version of it in my opinion. So we have a great performance, we have great songwriting, we have great production, and I would say it's very innovative for the time, because if you listen to the sound of his harmonies and the way he sings some of these different lines in the songs, it doesn't sound like anything else at the time. So that's going to be number 6 on my list. 5 on my list is going to be an album by Captain Beefheart and his Magic Band called Safe as Milk. This is probably one of the more underrated artists on my list, and I don't think this album gets enough attention. So we have several good songs on this record. We have Sure Enough and Yes I Do. We have Zigzag Wanderer. We have I'm Glad. We have Yellow Brick Road, and we have Plastic Factory. Those are the ones that really stand out to me. Generally with his sound, it's very bluesy. It's like bluesy rock, I guess you could say, but he also has like ballads like I'm Glad, which showcases how good of a songwriter he was. Unfortunately, I have to say that this probably has the worst production of any record on this list. The production is very poor, so you kind of gotta listen past that, but the songwriting is good, the performance is good, the songs are good, and how unique and how innovative it was at the time, I would say, is pretty substantial. So that's going to be number 5. Number 4 on my list is going to be an album by Albert King called Born Under a Bad Sign. I think this is one of the best blues albums to ever come out. We have a ton of good songs in there. We have Born Under a Bad Sign, we have The Hunter, we have I Almost Lost My Mind, we have Kansas City, we have Crosscut Saw. And although he didn't, I wouldn't say songwriting is necessarily the thing that makes him stand out the most. Similar to Aretha Franklin, I would say it's the way he does the covers, or the way he performs these songs, right? It's his guitar playing, and it's his arrangements and the way he just thinks about the song. But Born Under a Bad Sign is probably one of the most important blues songs of all time. And then I think his cover of Almost Lost My Mind is probably the best out there. A bunch of people cover that song, and I still can't find one as good as his. Then you have songs like The Hunter that Jimmy Page and Led Zeppelin practically stole 2 years later for their first record. And so I think this is just a phenomenal record all the way around. Okay, number 3 on my list is going to be another record by The Doors, which was the second one they put out that year. And although the first Doors album was great, I think this one is just a slight bit better. And that's because we have songs like Strange Days, we have songs like Love Me 2 Times, we have People Are Strange, we have Moonlight Drive, and then we have When the Music's Over. So I think this one has more stronger songs on it than the first album did. I also think that the production's better, and that this album, it's almost like a concept album, because this album, from song to song, it flows a lot better than most albums in general do. So the guitar playing's good, the riffs that Robbie Krieger has are great. The lyrics, the songwriting here for most of these songs is phenomenal, and that's why I think this is the 3rd best record of 1967. Number 2 on my list is going to be the debut album by Velvet Underground and Nico, and this one has tons of great songs on it. I think the biggest thing that stands out is Lou Reed's songwriting. I think that's really why this record is important, why it's influential, and why it's innovative. Lou Reed is probably one of the best songwriters of all time, and there's tons of great songs on this record. There's Waiting for the Man, there is There She Goes Again, there's All Tomorrow's Parties, there's Sunday Morning, lots of great songs on here. My biggest complaint with this record is going to be the production, because it almost makes it hard to listen to for some songs because the production is so bad. But at the time, this was a very innovative record, but I also think it's underrated looking back. I think it didn't quite get the attention it deserved at the time, but looking back now, we can see that it was very innovative for its time. So that's going to be number 2. Number 1 on my list is going to be the debut album by the Jimi Hendrix Experience. And what makes this album important is that it is one of the most influential records for guitar players, but also for shaping rock music, because at that time, nobody had that sound and that energy in 1966, 1967. So right when this record comes out, this is the first time people get to hear Jimi Hendrix. And if you listen to stories from Eric Clapton or Paul McCartney, they'll tell you that at that time, it blew them away and there was nothing like it. So not only was the guitar playing phenomenal, the performance phenomenal for this record, but the songwriting really stands out here, because it's not just generic rock and blues music like other artists at the time. We have songs like Wind Cries Mary and May This Be Love that really showcase that Jimi Hendrix can write a great song. Now, we have the fuzz and the distortion coming out at that time that wasn't, this was just new at the time, so nobody really had those sounds yet. And this influenced years and years of guitar players, right? From Jimmy Page to Eddie Van Halen, even to guitar players today like Jack White. So that's why this is number one on my list, the Jimi Hendrix debut album.